Hello, and I'm going to provide an update on some of the key fruiting period pests in southeastern strawberries. Much of the information that I will be sharing has been generated by graduate students past and present in my lab, including Doug McPhee and Laura Kraft. But first, before we move on to that, I want to highlight some of the damage that you might be seeing in your fields right now. So oftentimes this time of year, we see malformed fruit, which can have a variety of causes. And I'd like you to take a minute to try to identify the injury associated with the fruit in each of these pictures. All right, so this top one is our most common source of malformed fruit this time of year, and that's poor pollination. This occurs either because fruit have become damaged due to cold injury, or in protecting them from cold injury through irrigation or row cover, we have excluded normal pollination through wind or insect-mediated movement. Lygus bugs can also cause malformed fruit, but their injury can occur anywhere on the fruit and doesn't result in differently shaped seed sizes. Abiotic injury can also cause malformed fruit. Seeds will be uniform on these fruit as well, but oftentimes this malformation is focused along the tip of the berry rather than located throughout the fruit. So moving on, I just wanted to highlight this injury because it's really common this time of year and it's something you might be getting questions about. Now let's move on to the two key pests that I'll be covering. First, I'm going to talk about strawberry clipper weevil. These occur from the east of the Rocky Mountains all the way down into Florida and up into Canada. They overwinter as adults, as shown here, and they emerge when temperatures exceed 61 degrees Fahrenheit. The females then lay their eggs into buds by chewing a small hole and then clipping the pedicel. That bud falls down to the ground, into which the larvae develop, pupate, and then eventually emerge later in the summer as adults. Females can lay up to 75 eggs and therefore damage up to 75 developing buds. Because the injury occurs to buds, there's obviously a significant amount of grower concern associated with this damage. Strawberry clipper have one generation per year, and they feed not only on strawberries, but also on a number of other spring fruiting plants, including redbuds, blackberries, and even magnolia. Once the pupae emerge, they return to their overwintering sites. So they don't spend time within our strawberry fields. They move back into protected sites in the woods. So my graduate student, Doug McPhee, wanted to understand the impact of strawberry clipper weevil in southeastern strawberries because research in other parts of the country suggested that plants do a really good job of compensating for the injury that they cause. And so he conducted 2 years of field experiments where he artificially removed buds at the same time we observed injury at grower locations we were monitoring and recorded the yield associated with that bud loss. So we had a control treatment where no buds were removed, a treatment where all primary buds, as shown here in circled with A, were removed, a treatment where all secondary buds are removed, and a treatment where all tertiary buds are removed. Obviously, these were removed at the bud stage, not at the flower or fruit stage, but this just illustrates the different timing of those different bud stages. Plots were harvested twice per week, and we weighed the total weight of all berries collected in order to assess yield potential. We looked at Camarosa across 2 years, 2014 and 2015, as well as Albion, Benicia, Chandler, and Sweet Charlie. And what this table is showing you is just the number of buds removed in each of those treatments across all varieties on average. And you can see there's a range in the number of buds that were removed. Sweet Charlie had the most primary buds removed, and Chandler had the most secondary buds removed, and most tertiary buds removed. And so there's variability across varieties in terms of timing of their fruiting. We know this based on when we pick them. And there's also variability in the number of buds they were producing across our treatments, with Chandler resulting in the most, nearly 17 buds on average per plant removed in the secondary bud removal treatment. Despite those large numbers of buds per plant being removed, we saw no significant difference in yield across any of these treatments in any of the varieties. What I'm showing you here are the data for 2014, and you can see while there's a little bit of variability, there's no significant difference in total weight across any of these varieties for any of these treatments. Where we did have some variability was in harvest timing. And so in some cases, we saw a reduction in yield over 1 week or an increase in yield over another week. And so what I'm showing you in this table is across each treatment, primary, secondary, and tertiary bud removal, relative to the control, if there was a reduction or an increase in yield, and the number of weeks that occurred for. So you can see in some cases for primary buds removed, there was a decrease over up to 2 weeks in Camarosa for 1 year. And in the case of Chandler, there was an increase in those primary bud removed treatments over the course of 2 weeks. And so this carries through. So we see this shift in harvest timing, but that didn't impact total yield. In these same experiments, Doug also screened a number of less toxic pesticides as potential alternatives for our pyrethroid tools that are often recommended for use against strawberry clipper when growers are concerned. And so he screened Asail, Beleaf, and Spinosad, and found that compared to our untreated control here, where we saw no mortality, we saw significant mortality in the Asail and the Spinosad treatments. So some take-home messages associated with this work on strawberry clipper. We learned through our monitoring work that strawberry clipper presence and intensity is highly variable, even between locations that were close to each other, but that bud removal does not appear to reduce total yield across any of the varieties we tested, although it may impact harvest timing on the order of shifting things 1 week here and there. However, we don't think that requires management. If clipper management is necessary, Asail and Entrust are effective and they have slightly less pollinator risk concerns. However, you still want to apply those materials in the evening because when they are wet, they are still toxic to bees. Most clipper injury we observed at our monitoring locations were when the secondary buds were present. And we are not recommending management for strawberry clipper unless you're experiencing bud loss that's approaching the levels we observed in our plots, which was up to 16 per plant for Chandler. And that's pretty rare at grower locations. But in the event that management is necessary, you want to pay careful attention to whatever tool you use and their pollinator protection regulations on the label. All right, let's move on to talk about spotted wing Drosophila next. So I don't need to belabor the point that spotted wing Drosophila is a significant pest in lots of softskins fruit crops because larvae developing in fruit are not acceptable to consumers. But in strawberries, they are generally lower risk for spotted wing Drosophila damage because they are harvested in the period of the year when our populations are low and therefore infestation in the field is often undetectable or absent. Fall fruiting berries, however, which would be harvested in the period of time when spotted wing Drosophila populations are high, are at higher risk of injury. In most years, populations in our spring fruiting varieties can be managed through cultural control. That being said, there were some videos of larvae in fruit that went viral during 2020, raising potential post-harvest concerns about things like spotted wing Drosophila in strawberries. Now, it's important to point out in these viral videos, the larvae that were observed couldn't be identified to species because that's not something we can do visually. And so I can't tell you if they were spotted wing Drosophila or one of their closely related cousins. Needless to say, you can sample your fruit, and I highly recommend doing so on a regular basis to determine whether or not you have any potential larval presence. You can do this using a saltwater extraction technique, and I've linked here to a video that we've developed in my lab, which is available on YouTube. So some recommendations for spotted wing Drosophila management. For spring fruiting strawberries, I recommend that growers consider monitoring adult flies and sample fruit. They should also practice good sanitation, which means thorough harvest and removing culled fruit, and begin management if you find infestation or if you're trapping flies in your field. You should also consider post-harvest handling. For fall fruiting berries, monitor your fruit and consider monitoring adult flies, but we know flies are present at that time of year. You also want to practice good sanitation. Again, remove any cull fruit and harvest frequently and thoroughly, and implement a management program, including post-harvest fruit handling. The tools that we know are effective against spotted wing Drosophila and are labeled in strawberries include bifenthrin, malathion, spinosad, and cyantraniliprole, which is labeled as Exirel. Radiant is the material that spinosad is labeled as in strawberries, and this is preferable to Entrust, which is also labeled in strawberries, but has less residual activity than Radiant. All of these have pre-harvest intervals that are amenable to their use during the harvest period, as long as it's taken into consideration before treatment. We know that frequent and thorough harvesting can reduce infestation. This is work done in raspberries, illustrating that when you harvest every day or every 2 days and completely remove the fruit that are present, you significantly reduce the amount of eggs, small larvae, and large larvae present in fruit. We also know that getting your fruit cold after harvest can significantly impact any larvae that do make it into that fruit and are present at the time of harvest. We know this from field infested fruit held at 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, or 2.2 degrees Celsius or 34 degrees Fahrenheit. The longer you hold that fruit, the higher mortality you're going to have, and you need to hold it for at least 3 days in order to have significant mortality. And we know that egg, newly hatched larvae, middle-aged larvae, and large larvae are affected relatively similarly in strawberries, with those newly hatched larvae being somewhat less susceptible to those cold temperatures. And here I'm showing you 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit. And this means that getting that fruit off the plant as quickly as possible so eggs do not have time to hatch will impact the effect your post-harvest cold storage will have on reducing infestation. All right, I'm going to turn it over to Erin to highlight thrips management in strawberries and wrap it up here. Thank you very much.